Welcome to our deep dive. You ready to explore what happens in your gut?
Always fascinating.
You've been curious about what's going on down there.
Especially when things go wrong.
Exactly. So get ready to learn about helpful allies
And
formidable foes.
I have a feeling this is going to be a bumpy ride. You with me?
Let's dive in.
Perfect. The textbook talks about this unbelievable diversity of microbes.
A microscopic jungle.
Yeah, like a whole world living inside of us. It's kind of overwhelming.
It's mind-boggling, but most of them are actually beneficial.
These good bacteria.
Right, like bacteroids and firmicutes.
They're essential for digestion.
And they protect us from harmful invaders.
Okay, so they're like our internal bodyguards. How do they keep the bad guys in check?
Well, they have some pretty effective strategies. They compete for resources so pathogens can't get a foothold.
Makes sense.
And they produce substances that change the environment, making it less hospitable to the troublemakers.
So it's like they're the neighborhood watch of our gut.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They maintain a balanced ecosystem, keep things running smoothly. That makes sense.
But like any ecosystem, things can get out of whack, and that's when infections happen.
And judging from the textbook, some of these infections sound pretty rough. Inflammation, ulcers, even dysentery.
Yeah, there's a wide range of culprits. Bacteria, viruses, protozoa.
And even parasitic worms.
Yes, also known as helminths.
Helminths. Those sound like something out of a sci-fi movie.
They can be pretty scary. Some can grow several feet long.
Several feet long in our intestines.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why understanding these pathogens is so important.
All right, let's get into specifics. What are some of the most notorious pathogens that can wreak havoc in our digestive system?
Well, let's start with a familiar one, Streptococcus mutans.
Ah, the mastermind behind Cavities. I'm suddenly feeling very grateful for my toothbrush.
As you should be. It thrives on sugars. We eat producing acids that erode tooth enamel.
And creates biofilms, that sticky plaque.
Right, which can lead to all sorts of dental problems.
Okay, so that's one to watch out for. What about something more serious?
How about Helicobacter pylori?
That's the one that lives in our stomach, right?
Yes, in that harsh, acidic environment.
Scientists didn't even think that was possible.
It defied the odds, though.
And it turned out to be the culprit behind
Peptic ulcers.
those painful sores.
Exactly, in the lining of the stomach or duodenum.
So a discovery that went from impossible to, oh no, that's causing a lot of problems.
It really highlights how much we're still learning about our gut microbiome.
For sure. Okay, so what else is lurking in the depths of our digestive system?
Well, there's E. coli.
I know some strains can be dangerous.
Right, many are harmless, even beneficial.
That
But there's one called EHEC.
enter hemorrhagic E. coli.
It produces a toxin that can lead to a serious condition called
Hemolytic uremic syndrome?
or HU.
That sounds serious.
It can damage red blood cells in kidneys.
Oh, wow.
In some cases, it can be life-threatening.
So not all E. coli is created equal.
Definitely something to keep in mind, especially when it comes to food safety.
Okay, I'm ready for another one. What about Entamoeba histolytica?
That's a protozoan parasite.
The textbook mentioned dysentery.
Right. It invades the lining of the large intestine
Causes severe inflammation.
and bloody diarrhea.
That sounds awful.
It's a major health concern in parts of the world without clean water and sanitation.
Another reminder about hygiene and resources.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think I'm ready to face those parasitic worms now.
Yeah.
Let's start with Ascaris lumbricoides, the one that can end up in your lungs.
Ah, yes. The roundworm with a travel bug.
I know. Tell me more about its life cycle.
It starts with ingesting eggs.
Okay.
They hatch in the intestines.
Makes sense.
Then the larvae make their way to the lungs.
Hold on. They travel to the lungs. Why?
It's all part of their life cycle.
Wow.
They burrow into the lung tissue, causing coughing.
So they make us cough.
And then we swallow them again,
Yeah, swallowed.
back into the intestines where they mature and lay more eggs.
So it's a round trip through our insides.
It highlights the adaptability of these organisms.
Okay, one more parasitic worm, and I think I need a break. What about Trichinella spp? What makes this one stand out?
We acquire it by eating undercooked meat.
Usually pork.
The larvae insist in the muscle tissue.
Okay.
If the meat isn't cooked properly, those larvae emerge in our intestines and cause trichinosis.
So another reason to make sure our food is cooked thoroughly. Food safety is no joke.
Absolutely. One of our best defenses against these unwelcome guests.
Okay, so we've met a whole cast of characters that can cause some serious problems in our digestive system. But how do we know if we're infected with one of these pathogens?
That's where diagnostics come in.
Okay.
There are common symptoms like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and fever.
But those could be caused by a lot of things.
Exactly. That's why lab tests are crucial.
What kind of lab tests?
Well, one of the most common is a stool exam,
Okay.
specifically an O&P exam.
O&P.
It stands for ova and parasite.
Ova like eggs.
Exactly. They examine a stool sample under a microscope to look for eggs, larvae, or even adult parasite.
Like a microscopic detective story.
Exactly.
Okay, so once we've identified the enemy, how do we fight back? The textbook mentioned a range of treatment approaches. What are our options?
Well, the treatment depends on the specific pathogen.
I figured as much.
For many infections, especially those causing diarrhea, rehydration is the first line of defense.
Replenish fluids and electrolytes.
Exactly.
Makes sense, but what about those bacterial infections?
Antibiotics are often necessary.
Of course.
But there's a growing challenge of antibiotic resistance.
I've heard a lot about that.
Some bacteria are becoming less susceptible to these medications.
So it's harder to treat them.
Exactly, which is why choosing the right antibiotic is so important.
And why we shouldn't overuse them.
Exactly. Antibiotic resistance is a global concern.
What about those parasitic worms? How do we get rid of those?
For protozoan and helminth infections, we use antiparasitic drugs.
What do they do?
They target the parasites, specifically interfering with their metabolism or disrupting their life cycle.
So it's like a targeted attack.
Precisely. And each infection requires a specific approach. There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
All right, so we've covered a lot here. The complex ecosystem of our gut, the microscopic villains that can cause trouble, how to diagnose and treat these infections. But beyond treating them, well, what can we do to prevent them at the first place?
That's a great question.
Right.
Simple things like washing our hands thoroughly,
Right.
cooking food to the proper temperatures, and being mindful of food handling practices.
So basic hygiene goes a long way.
Absolutely. And on a global scale, access to clean water and sanitation is crucial.
It's a reminder that these issues go beyond our individual health.
Exactly. We're all interconnected in this microbial world.
And that brings us to this fascinating point, the coevolution between humans and our gut microbes.
It's a constant dance between us and these tiny organisms, a relationship that's been shaping our health for millennia.
You say some of those dance moves seem a little aggressive if you ask me.
Well, every good dance has its dramatic moments, but think about it. These microbes have been with us from the very beginning, adapting and evolving alongside us.
It's a reminder that we're not just individuals, but ecosystems, walking, talking colonies of life.
A profound thought, and as we delve deeper into this relationship, we're uncovering incredible potential for developing new treatments and even harnessing the power of these microbes for good.
Harnessing their power, imagine the possibilities if we could turn these microbial foes into allies.
The future of medicine might very well lie in that very idea.
That's amazing. Okay, listener, I don't know about you, but my mind is officially blown.
Mine too. It's fascinating to think about, isn't it?
Absolutely. But before we get too lost in the microbial abyss, let's take a moment to test your knowledge with a few quick questions. Don't worry, it's just for fun.
All right, get ready. First question. Which type of E. coli infection can lead to hemolytic uremic syndrome?
Think back to our discussion about the particularly dangerous strains. What was that one called?
That's right. It's EHEC, or enterohemorrhagic E. coli, the one that produces a toxin that can cause serious complications.
Okay, next question. What's the name of that microscopic exam used to identify parasites in a stool sample?
Remember, it's the one where they're looking for evidence of those unwelcome guests like eggs or larvae?
It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's a key tool in diagnosing parasitic infections.
That's right. It's the O&P exam, short for ova and parasite exam.
Okay, last question, and this one might be a bit tricky. Which parasitic worm takes a detour to the lungs during its life cycle?
Think back to that roundworm with a penchant for travel.
It's the one that causes coughing and then gets swallowed again, ending up back where it started.
That's right. It's Ascaris lumbricoides. Quite the journey, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Okay, that's it for our mini quiz. Hopefully you aced it.
And if not, no worries. The important thing is to stay curious and keep learning about this fascinating world within us.
Well said. All right, let's take a quick break to regroup, and when we come back, we'll dive into some of the broader implications of these digestive system infections.
Welcome back.
It feels like we've just scratched the surface.
We've covered a lot of ground, those microscopic allies and foes.
Yeah, and that quiz was fun.
It was a good way to test what we've learned.
Definitely. But let's zoom out a bit.
Look at the bigger picture.
What are some of the broader implications of these infections?
The textbook highlights that it's not just individual health.
Right, it's about global health, too.
Exactly. These infections can devastate areas with limited access to clean water and sanitation.
That's a major problem.
It underscored how interconnected our world is.
And how important it is to address these global challenges.
Absolutely.
It's a sobering thought.
It is, but it's also a reminder that even small actions can make a difference.
Like what?
Supporting organizations that improve sanitation in developing countries.
That could have a huge impact.
A ripple effect on global health.
What about on an individual level?
Practicing good hygiene and food safety.
Those are things we can all do.
Speaking of food safety, the textbook really emphasizes its role in preventing these infections.
It's like a chain of defense.
From the farm to our forks, each link is vital.
So everyone has a responsibility.
Farmers, food processors, restaurants, even home cooks.
And consumers can make choices that support safe food practices.
Exactly.
Another important point is antibiotic resistance.
That's a growing threat.
It's really alarming, especially since we rely so heavily on antibiotics.
And as bacteria become resistant,
It's harder to treat infections.
it can lead to serious complications, even death.
The textbook says this resistance is fueled by overuse and misuse of antibiotics.
In both humans and livestock.
So again, our actions have far-reaching consequences.
Absolutely. We need to use antibiotics judiciously, only when truly necessary.
What about parasitic infections? Are there any broader implications there?
Of course, they're often linked to poverty and lack of access to basic resources like clean water and sanitation.
So it's not just about individual behavior.
It's about addressing systemic issues that contribute to the spread of these parasites.
And it's important to remember, anyone can get infected.
Travelers can bring parasites back from other countries
And outbreaks can occur even in developed nations.
due to contaminated food or water
So awareness and prevention are crucial.
on all levels.
Now let's shift gears a bit. The textbook also talked about the relationship between humans and our gut microbes,
A co-evolutionary dance that's been going on for millennia.
shaping our health and well-being in countless ways.
It's amazing how these tiny organisms have such a profound impact.
It really is, and as we learn more about this relationship,
We're uncovering incredible potential for improving our health.
like what?
Researchers are exploring fecal microbiota transplantation.
To treat certain digestive disorders.
It involves transplanting fecal matter from a healthy donor into the gut of a patient with an imbalance in their gut microbiota.
That sounds a bit unconventional.
It does, but it's showing promising results in treating conditions like clostridioides difficile infection.
Which can be really hard to treat with traditional antibiotics.
Exactly. And there's even research exploring the potential of manipulating the gut microbiome.
To treat other conditions.
Like obesity, autoimmune diseases, even mental health disorders.
Wow.
It seems like we're just scratching the surface of what we can learn from these microbes.
It's an area of research that's rapidly evolving.
Yes.
Well, listener, it feels like every time we delve deeper into this microbial world, we uncover more questions than answers.
But that's the beauty of science.
It's a constant process of discovery and exploration.
And speaking of exploration, I think it's time for us to move on to another fascinating aspect of this topic.
What's next on our agenda? It's amazing how much we've learned about this hidden world.
Right, from those microscopic allies to those formidable foes.
And we've talked about global health challenges, antibiotic resistance.
Even touched on harnessing the power of microbes for good.
But before we wrap up our deep dive,
Let's reflect on some key takeaways.
what stands out to you?
Well, our gut microbiome is so complex and constantly evolving.
It's a finely tuned ecosystem crucial for our health.
And when this balance is disrupted, it impacts our whole body.
We saw how infections range from mild discomfort to life-threatening complications,
And the importance of diagnosis and treatment.
but also the challenges of antibiotic resistance.
Right.
Beyond treatment, though, we talked about prevention.
Simple habits like hand washing, proper food, handling access to clean water and sanitation.
They make a huge difference.
It's empowering to know we have control over our own digestive health.
And that even small actions can have a big impact.
Absolutely. Another key takeaway is that our relationship with gut microbes is constantly evolving.
It's like a dance.
A co-evolutionary dance that's been going on for millennia.
As we learn more about this intricate relationship,
We're unlocking incredible potential for improving our health.
fecal microbiota transplantation, manipulating the gut microbiome.
There's a lot to be excited about in this field.
It's a reminder that the world within us is just as fascinating as the world around us.
So, listener, as we conclude this deep dive, we hope you've gained a newfound appreciation for the amazing world of the digestive system and its microscopic inhabitants.
Knowledge is power, And by understanding our gut, we can make informed decisions about our health.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those good gut bacteria thriving.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.